Hello everyone, welcome to the program. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimbaloye in Abuja. Let's begin by letting you know that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has been giving some more insight to the recovery of the 753 duplexes and other apartments on Plot 109 Cadastral Zone CO9 Local Government District of Abuja. The EFCC says the allegation of a cover-up of the identity of the promoters of the estate stands logic on the head, in the sense that the proceedings for the forfeiture of the estate were in line with Section 17 of the Advanced Fee Fraud Act, which is a civil proceeding that allows for action in rem rather than action in personam. The latter allows legal actions against a property and not an individual, especially in a situation of an unclaimed property. This act allows you to take up forfeiture proceedings against a chattel that is not a juristic person. This is exactly what the commission did in respect of the estate. Well, let's check up some of your political roundup stories now.
President Bola Tinubu is in South Africa on an official visit and was received by President Cyril Ramaphosa in Cape Town. The president will co-chair the 11th session of the Nigeria-South Africa Binational Commission. President Tinubu says Nigeria and South Africa share a collective destiny to collaborate for the betterment of the African continent. The Senate today passed the 2025-2027 Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper for implementation by the federal government. The passage followed the presentation of a report by the chairman of the Joint Committees on Finance and National Planning and Economic Affairs, presented by Senator Musa Sani. The Senate also tasked its committees on finance and petroleum as well as gas to investigate allegations of withheld funds by the NNPC, including 8.48 trillion naira in petrol subsidies and $2 billion in unpaid taxes, as highlighted by reports from NATI and the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Responsibility Commission. The Senate has confirmed the nomination of Lieutenant General Olufemi Olatubosun Oluyede for the appointment as Chief of Army Staff. The confirmation today followed the consideration of reports by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Army, Senator Yaradua Musa. The committee's recommendations were unanimously adopted by the upper chamber. Lieutenant General Oluyede was appointed to act as the Chief of Army Staff following the illness and subsequent death of Lieutenant General Taoreed Abiodun Lagbaja. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has officially signed the Lagos Electricity Bill into law. He said the electricity bill has been in the works for some years, and now that it is finally achieved, Lagosians can be sure of a steady power supply. Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has vowed to implement the report of the State Commission of Inquiry on the destruction of local government secretariats, no matter who is involved. Governor Fubara made the commitment during the presentation of the Commission's report by its chairman, Justice Ibiwengi Minakiri, a serving judge of the State High Court, at the Executive Chamber of the Government House in Port Harcourt. The governor stressed the need to end what he described as unreasonable violence in politics, stating that politics should not be synonymous with violence, but a contest of ideas without permanent enemies or friends.
Of course, we told you about the story of the EFCC and the 753 duplexes that were forfeited. The court has affirmed the forfeiture proposition by the EFCC, which is going to be one of the largest forfeiture of an estate in the history of litigation in Nigeria, which reminds one of Rotimi Oyedepo's case at the Supreme Court on this kind of forfeiture. And the EFCC has been debunking allegation by Mr. Omoyele Sowore, saying that some of the allegations of cover-up stand logic on its head. President Bola Tinubu has directed the Federal Ministry of Justice and the National Assembly to work on concerns raised over the tax bills. Criticisms have greeted President Tinubu's transmission of the tax reform bills, which is an executive bill to the National Assembly. The move has pitted the president against some governors and some leaders in the country, especially in the northern region of the country. And the most of the criticism that coming from some senators and, in fact, some governors. And the President has now mandated the Justice Ministry to look into the concerns raised and work with the leadership of the National Assembly to fine-tune the rough edges in the bill. So that matter also caused some kind of ruckus in the House of Reps today, and which threw the session into a rowdy mood after the spokesperson of the House, Honorable Akin Rotimi from Ekiti State, referenced the tax reform bills and says perhaps his own state are one of those states that are affirmed and support the bill on the floor. Rotimi had risen to move a motion for the consideration of two reports on behalf of Boma Goodhead, a lawmaker from Rivers State who was absent at plenary.
Mr. Speaker, I seek the leave of the House and Mr. Speaker to step down because the presentation of this report until the next legislative day, Mr. Speaker. Okay. Thank you, sir.
If you choose to do so, the bill is stepped down by the leave of the House.
All right, then. A lot of eminent Nigerians have been speaking, those in the executive, those in the National Assembly, speaking for the interests of the Nigerian people. Tonight, I have a former governor, a sitting senator, represented by Yelsa State in the National Assembly, a member of the People's Democratic Party. Senator Seriake Dixon is live for us in our studio here. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, Shehu.
Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you for doing what you are doing.
Thank you so much indeed,
Thank
sir. It's indeed a very interesting period in our lives. I mean, you will remember, I guess, you left the House of Reps, but the conversation about the PIB started when you were in the House of Reps.
Clearly.
So, and it's been a heated conversation. Yeah. And this also goes down even when Nigeria started discussing issues of derivation formula. You are one from the oil producing state, and you know how sensitive these issues are.
Yeah.
Nobody likes the face of a tax master. So when these issues are coming up, when we understand how touchy and edgy Nigerians could become about this matter. But as a former governor, you have a lot of insight. You know where the figures are. You and a sitting lawmaker, you also know the issue. So I'm speaking with a perfect, rounded personality in this, and also a lawyer. Indeed. So give us an understanding. What's your view on the matter of these tax reform bills?
Well, thank you very much. Look, first of all, any reform is not just legal or technical. A reform as massive as that conveyed in the 4 bills that the President and his team sent to the National Assembly requires a lot of political consensus building, consultation and consensus building. Every reform. I carried out a massive civil service reform while I was governor. And there's nothing bad about reforms. If you want to bring about lasting change, as governor or as a president, you must undertake fundamental reforms. The deeper the reforms are, the more fundamental they are, then the more likely that the result could last even beyond you. So I can understand the reason behind the president and the executive arm undertaking this reform. There's nothing wrong about that. And as you rightly said, any reform or even a minor amendment in a tax or revenue legislation will elicit a lot of interest and concern. And that is legitimate, not to talk of when you are proposing 4 bills at a time, repealing a lot of laws and so on. So the interest is understandable. That's what I'm making, the point I'm making. The interest is
whatever we are seeing, the debate now and the agitation.
It's perfectly normal, perfect to be expected. As you rightly said, when the PIB was introduced at that time, and the PIB took us almost 20 years to pass.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So back and forth, consultations, disagreements, even walkouts. In fact, when I left the House of Reps and went to be governor after 8 years and came back to the Senate, the PIB was still there. And you know what? At the final passage, I had to lead a walkout because I disagreed with the paltry 3% that the executive was now proposing, that my colleagues that we were interfacing, we couldn't move them to change their positions. And I let them. It's all legitimate and perfect. So the uproar, the concerns, the fears, and the different perspectives is legitimate. What is slightly missing, or I can't say even missing, even though I'm not part of the executive, because of the fundamental nature of the reforms at the far-reaching extent
you've read
and
them.
effect. Of course, we have the 4 bills. I've read most of them. I've read all of them. I think that we could have had more robust and extensive consultation. I was a governor for 8 years, as you know, and therefore a member of the NEC, the National Economic Council, established by the Constitution anyway.
Shared by the Vice President.
Yeah, shared by the Vice President. A member of the Governors Forum also. You know? So these tax bills that affect, you know, the revenues of the entire federation, including subnationals, you know, I think we could have had more extensive and robust consultation before, while they were being crafted, you know, before they were sent. But since they were sent, and the president is well within his right to formulate bills and send to the National Assembly, doesn't need to read them through. It's just that because every reform entails political consensus building, you know, it's always better, even though there's no consultation you will embark on where everybody, every stakeholder will support.
So theoretically, in terms of the literature and the formulation of some of the policies in the proposition of the bills, everything looks intact. And the procedure up to the point where it was transmitted to the National Assembly, everything from your own point of view is in order, except the fact that the president and the executive are not playing the right politics.
No. Could have the consultation could have been broader. That's what I mean.
That's part of politicking.
That's what I mean.
In terms of consensus building that you talked about, a lot of people will see it as either parliamentary politics or even national politics, just to bring people on board.
And even within the legislature, legislatures all over the world, there is the concept of lobbying. You must engage. Presidents or governors, presidents call parliamentarians. Presidents have dinners. Presidents have this. It's all part of the game. And our president is a field marshal in the game, in the political game. Yes. I think, and there's time for that. Okay, so let's not get it wrong. So when we had the bills, and I told my colleagues, both in the closed door session and in plenary, my views, you are aware of what I said. I said, look, we could have had better consultation, more extensive and robust consultation. But the bills are here, nevertheless. And we have a duty under the Constitution to process them. And I gave my views. I'm a federalist, okay? I've spent the better part of my adult life in politics working for a federal, united, peaceful and just Nigeria, an inclusive Nigeria, okay? And we've also been raising issues about the need to devolve power, the need to strengthen federating units, the need for people to see how we can generate revenues, develop at our own pace, different pace, while working for a united Nigeria. You know, that was the understanding we had when this country became independent. So when some of us talk about going back to the founding federal principles before 1966, that's exactly what we mean. So I'm a committed federalist. And I can't spend all my years talking about restructuring and devolution. And here comes a president who introducing bills that are clearly an effort at fiscal federalism, entrenching fiscal federalism. Oh boy, I don't need any consultation to be able to support. So in general principles, yes, I'm in support. And we took our arguments on general principles. And by our rules, when bills come up at that level, we discuss the general principles, not section by section at that stage. That is left for the committee. The work of every legislation The extensive work is done at the committee,
level.
Plenary doesn't have the time for that. Okay? Plenary is a sacred meeting place.
So the hue and cry about passage of the second reading was not founded because it's a surface, it's a summary, it's an executive summary passage.
Yeah. What the question we were asking ourselves, and I addressed my colleagues on it. Look, at this level, we are not doing a section by section analysis. We're asking ourselves the general question: these bills, do they make sense? That's all. Is a tax reform imperative for Nigeria? And the answer was yes. I don't think anybody was prepared to say no. Okay? And so we now said, the Senate presiding officer now, in accordance with our rules, directed it to be referred to the committee chaired by distinguished Senator Sani Musa, Niger East. And I'm a member of the Finance Committee also, as I am.
You've been given 6 weeks.
Yes, so for us to process the bill in accordance with our rules, meaning therefore that there will be extensive and robust public hearings, okay, at which every stakeholder, every group, every individual who has anything to say, any concerns to express, any fears to be allayed, will appear before the committee and then raise these issues, so that the committee, at that level of a committee, with the benefit of technical consultants and so on, will now look at all those issues. If, for example, in the course of the public hearing, we come to the conclusion, as some of my colleagues have been telling me, close friends and allies across the country, even in the north, more in the north, and they have come to tell me, look, that we have concerns that this may be unconstitutional. This may be a repeal of social law. And I say, okay, no problem. When we meet at the public hearing, we'll refer the Attorney General, we'll invite the Attorney General of the Federation to give an opinion. We will call for other legal practitioners to give an opinion. And some of us are also very senior lawyers. And experience. The Senate has a lot of experienced people from all parts of the country, you know, and we're very experienced.
Let me
take you justice to it at that level.
Let me take you on a quick ride.
Yes.
Nigeria is very complex and interestingly very dynamic.
Yes.
And you are also from that dynamic part of the country. 8 local government, that's what Bayelsa has. And I'm not sure that there is any state in Nigeria that has more water bodies than your state. In terms of resources, in terms of revenue allocation, in terms of derivation, in terms of allocation, all of these issues are issues that you perhaps have faced as a governor, as a lawmaker. And so when we're talking about the diversity of this country, there are some states that if you mention, it will give you an understanding of how interesting this country is.
Interesting.
That's one of the interesting countries in the world. Give us an understanding of the fairness that you think is there in these bills. Do you see any kind of fairness? Because there are those who agitate that things may not be looking fair, but there are scenarios. There are estimations that are being made according to the proposition compared to what exists right now.
Look, let me tell you, before I get there, let me educate you, as I always educate Nigerians, about the state of Bayelsa, the great state of Bayelsa.
Absolutely.
First of all, local governments are not created by civilian administrations. Local governments were created by fiat. Even states were created by fiat. And the fact that General Sani Abacha, whom we are very fond of in Bayelsa, anyway, we don't care what the rest of you say about him, but he gave us a state, which others did not. Okay? When he did that, we were very happy, but people didn't quite follow up on the issue of local governments. So there is this wrong notion over the years. As Bayelsa is only 8 states. Let me educate you. Bayelsa, the size of Bayelsa, is almost that of River State, landmass. It will shock you, but you can Google it.
I'm aware.
Oh, yes. Bayelsa is about 10,700 and something square kilometers. You understand? River State is about 11,000 something. Very small difference. So what they did was to split the state, the old River State, our old River State, into almost 2 equal parts. Now, What is Bayelsa is 8 local governments. Bayelsa is like 4 times Lagos State, the landmass.
Landmass, yeah.
4 times.
Bigger
People don't know. Bayelsa is like, there are some states in the southeast that Bayelsa is like 3 times the landmass and the water bodies. But yet, 8 local governments. So I just wanted that clarification. Now, if you are talking of benefits and fairness, as I told my colleagues in both the closed session and the plenary, look, we go by what is fair and what is right. And they all know that about me. What is right, we'll support it. What has to be opposed in the national interest. And I always advise that we do so not from a narrow ethnic or religious perspective. But let us disagree as national leaders, as national players. Because in the national assembly, we are national leaders, okay? Now, look at this. The scenario now is that if you look at the sharing formula, the old formula, there are 2 ways to look at it. The first is the one from up to down. The state, local governments take 35%. States are taking, local governments are taking 35%. States, with your existing formula, the states will now take the rest, and then the federal government takes 15%. You understand? Now, the new proposal is that states, when it will change a little, states will now take 50%. And then the states, the LGs will now retain their 35%. The federal own has been reduced from 15 to 10. So between you and I disagree with that. And those are issues when we come, we will sort out. Okay? I think that the federation has a lot of challenges, and this is not the time to reduce.
There are 2 things.
Okay? Now, when you come to the other one that is shared across the states, which is where I think some concerns are being raised, I think the existing formula is that what is going to the states, they share it 50% on the basis of equality of states. Okay? All states equally. Then they now take 30% on the basis of population. Okay? And then the remaining 20%, they do it on derivation. That's the existing formula. What is being proposed, the section on this, what is being proposed, and I think that's where some concerns are being raised, where states say it could affect their revenue. And that concern is not a wrong concern. It's a legitimate conversation.
So the governors they're legitimately...
This is a democracy. I believe in consensus building, networking, consultation, agreement and disagreement in the national interest. Okay? Now, in that new formula that is proposed, remember 50% was for equality of states. Now, what is being proposed is that 60% will go to derivation. That is, states producing, they get 60% of what you produce. Okay? 20% on equality and 20% on population. That is what is contained. Now, I don't see anything unfair in this. Remember, I'm a federalist. And if you follow the doctrines of federalism, what it means is that states that produce, we're talking of tax revenue for God's sake. And VAT that everybody is talking about, VAT, as I told my colleagues, is not a production tax, it's a consumption tax. In other words, if I'm in Bayelsa and I buy card, I buy cement, Dangote cement or Bua cement, and somebody buys Kai, what it means is that the VAT attendant to it should accrue to the state. Because VAT essentially is a state tax. Because it is a consumption tax. It's not a production tax. What we have done is, because of our peculiar reasons, we have now decided to centralize the collection. And over the years, to enable everyone have some sense of belonging, enable everyone get on food and manage over the years, they formulated that system by which everybody has a share. But they are not jettisoning it. And the danger is that, there's a challenge. I also raised a lot of those issues as governor. Against FIRS, at the neck, and so on. There is a challenge by some governors at the Supreme Court saying that VAT being a state consumption tax, the states where things are produced and consumed
should be collecting it.
Should collect it and have it all at the Supreme Court. What I think that these legislations are trying to do, if we can build consensus fast enough, okay, and get them passed and signed into law, then it will now have a situation where states can still have the advantage of having 20% on the basis of equality, have another 20% on the basis of population, while the remaining 60% goes to states that have that enjoy it. Now, there's no state that does not generate VAT. Because consumption takes place everywhere.
Let me quickly take you on this one. I mean, by the way, thank you so much for the clarification that you made on Bayelsa.
Can I just make another point before we move on?
Okay.
In Bayelsa, part of what I have been fighting over the years is that most of our tax is paid to Lagos State. Most of our payee, most of our VAT is paid to Lagos State. Why? Because the existing tax regime requires that it be attributed to the state where the headquarters
of the company is.
Yes.
But in the proposition now,
yes,
that will be upturned.
That will be upturned.
So what is consumed in Bayelsa will come to Bayelsa.
That's what I want. So I'm supporting it.
So there's a correction of the old order.
Oh, yes.
And
so introducing fairness that I've been fighting for over the years. Wait a minute. Now, NAPIMS is in Lagos State. All the oil service contracts that are for jobs executed in Akwa Ibom, in the River State, in Delta, in Bayelsa, in parts of Edo, in Ondo, they are attributed to Lagos State. And I've been fighting. Even we have some cases that are instituted as governor, still ongoing. And these bills will correct that.
All right. Yeah, so as a matter of us, I mean, my final question would have been the solution, and you've given the solution in your submission of what needs to be done. That consensus has to be given. And I must thank you for the clarification on Bayelsa State. Yeah. Anybody who has not been to Bayelsa State may not understand or know. They don't know. And for someone who almost lost his life covering an election on the boat to Brass,
you did,
will understand.
You know the nature of it.
And that's why I was asking the question of fairness. Because you don't think that eight local government is befitting for a state as large as Bayelsa State. And that's why I was asking about the issue of fairness.
Yes.
But Your Excellency, on a final note, how do we resolve this ethnic division that these bills have generated?
Well, I mean, that's part of what people have to step up and play roles as leaders. Someone asked me about yesterday. I know some sensational headline was generated, which is not. And I told them, look, I don't comment on regional politics, on regional. I'm not an ethnic and regional politician. At our level, we have to be, or at least aspire to be, national politicians. So and that's what I've been discussing with my colleagues, from all parts of the country, that we can have a healthy conversation, even a debate, even a disagreement, and an argument. After all, what are parliaments for? We're not there to always agree. Mm-hmm. This is a vast and diverse country. There are states you go to that you will have almost 50, 100 different languages and cultures. Mm-hmm. This is a very interesting, beautiful, diverse nation. So no one should expect any unanimity of views or perspectives. No, disagreements are normal. And as my good friend Dogara said in your program, because I watched a little bit of it, okay? The more the arguments and the discussions and even the disagreements, it shows the virility of our democracy. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong about that. The only thing is, while doing so, we shouldn't ethnicize. We shouldn't bring in sectional sentiments, and we should address the issues. I'm supporting it because, as I said, every week they fly in workers, oil company workers from Lagos State to work in Bayelsa, in Brass, in Kulama, Okay? They do so. Fly workers from Lagos to Ibono, to Eket,
to Kolokuma,
to everywhere. And in Delta, they fly them to Focados, to Ogola. Okay? In Rivers, they fly them to Bonny every day. Now, as they go back, do you know where the pay of those workers are paid to?
Lagos.
We have to correct that. And this president and his team, I'm not in the president's party. I've not even seen the presidency. He knows me, I know him in our AD days. But he and I are in different parties. But here am I. I can see when something is being done to address a problem. I don't need anybody to come and tell me no. So if we have valid issues, and this is it, we have avenues for correcting it. At the public hearing, our expectation is, I can see that the president has directed the Attorney General to, even if the president did not direct, we have the powers, and some of us in that finance committee would have invited him and the Solicitor General to give informed opinions on those sections. Because if a section, I'm not convinced that a section can pass the test of constitutionality, we will strike that section out.
All right.
Simple. So we have an opportunity to fine-tune the bill. And I don't think anybody is averse to it. There's no legislation, and I've been a parliamentarian for some time, there's no legislation that somebody submits, the executive will submit to a parliament, and it comes out the same way. Then there's something wrong with that parliament. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
And you have people like us there.
Yeah.
So once there's any concern about any section, and we look at it, we tweak it. That's our duty under the Constitution.
All right.
And we have the powers to do that. We don't need any permission from anybody to do that.
Your Excellency.
Yes.
Former governor of Bayelsa State, sitting senator representing Bayelsa, the good people of Bayelsa State, that's what
very
they
wonderful
say.
people.
But very good job people. One thing I love to do, which I don't know how to do very well, is to drink kai-kai and also to swim. I don't know how to swim very well. No, I don't know how to swim very well. But I know you job people know how to do both very well.
Yes.
Thank you so much
There's
for
something
coming.
else I know you can do very well.
Fish.
We won't say it here.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Seriake Dixon, for your intervention tonight. I appreciate it. Well, we take a break, everyone, but when we come back, there is a controversial matter we took up right here. It's the assessment of the Edo governorship election. There is a right of reply tonight from the APC. We'll be getting that right after this break, everyone. Join us again. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. So last week, we had the Athena Center led by Mr. Osita Chidoka, who is the chancellor and the founder of the center. And in the past, they've done an assessment of Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa election. The latest assessment that center did was that of Edo election, which has generated a lot of controversies and reaction. Tonight we have a right of reply coming from the All Progressives Congress, APC, in Edo State. Tonight, I'm being joined by Prince Kasim Afegbua, a chieftain of the APC in Edo State. Thanks so much, Prince Afegbua, for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
You watched the edition of the program where the Athena Center said there was some compromises that were being made, apparently from their own report, by INEC, and that election, according to the Athena Center, is devoid of any kind of integrity an election should have.
So I watched that program very keenly because before the program, there was a promo sent to me by Osita Chidoka. And I remember responding to him, asking him, I hope he wasn't going on air to go and churn out ignorant, position concerning the election, knowing full well that Athena Center was not a participant in the Edo election. They didn't cover anywhere. They just sat down as member of PDP at Government House and listening to all the cock and bull stories that Obaseki had to tell. And so when I watched his presentation, I found it quite strange and curious because there were some of the things he was saying. Some of them were, for me, I was wondering if a man of Chidoka's status, having been a minister and ex-dad, does not know the procedure for elections and even collation of results. So I listened to him talking about the CTC and the result and IRF not tallying, all that and all that. See, Athena Center spoke about election in Imo. They spoke about election in Kogi. They are speaking on Edo. The next one will be Ondo. In all of this, Chidoka has always been a member of PDP, except on your program when he said he was resigning from partisan politics. But before then, he was just churning out the PDP position with respect to the election. And some of us just felt that they have a plan to blackmail the entire process, raise up public dust, and discredit, the election so that it will help their case at the tribunal. As I say this just like you said, this is right of reply because this case is already in the tribunal. We don't want to be caught by subjudice. We want to be as fair as possible in responding to the issues he raised. The truth of the matter is that PDP Edo should learn to be good losers. That's the truth. Edo people have spoken so eloquently in voting for a man they felt will bring peace and tranquility to transcend the politics and the political dynamics of Edo State. And not thinking that, they won the election,
Let's look at some of the issues, one after the other, that was raised. For example, I'd like to also say that the issue of media analysis or media reporting of election matters as relating to issues of litigation, the role of the media is established by our constitution and by our laws. And whether or not the meat of the matter has been discussed is another thing entirely. So for those who think that maybe it wasn't subject, the conversation was not subject because the meat of the conversation was not what it was in front of the court. In fact, judges have not even been established in the tribunal. So that's set aside. Let's look at it, Prince Afegbua. Some of the issues raised, and I'd like you to, because you have the floor today and you have all of the time to speak on it. One we imagine that the beavers, the record on the beavers is sacrosanct, is the conscience of our election as of today. Because that technology, that device should house the register of voters, anybody that would vote in that polling unit, the accredited voters, and also the record of voters at that election. But from the Attorney Center's own research, they say a lot of what was found in the beavers on the back end, as reported by INEC, does not tally with the result as been reported by the officials of INEC at the election center. What do you have to say to that?
That's where the ignorance comes in. You see, when you vote using card reader or beavers, as you rightly stated, at the polling unit, the beavers is just to accredit you. What happens to your vote is a different matter altogether, because the ballot is the common denominator that defines whether your vote is valid or invalid. What happens if you have been accredited and your vote, you decide to put your thumb in between two lines and they void that particular vote? How will beavers detect that? What happens to spoiled votes, which are captured under the Electoral Act 2022, such that maybe the serial numbers are not clear, maybe even the ballot paper maybe is even faint, the print on it, and all of that, and maybe the electoral officer or the polling agent decide to give to a voter to use, and all of that. All of these are captured. So when you vote at a polling unit, the final point, in line with the Electoral Act, different sections 63, 64, and 65 that defines the entire process, is that until the ward collation officer and by extension the local government collation officer certify the true status of those votes, what you get at the polling unit, which is the first point of voting, is not sacrosanct. That's the truth. Because in my area, I'll give you typical operative experience, which the Attorney Center didn't do. We voted on that day, we counted the votes, we recorded the votes. By 7 o'clock in the evening, we assembled at the Ward Collation Center in my Ward 5, Nokola, where I voted. We assembled there, all the party agents were all assembled, and at the end of the day, if you have queries, maybe mutilated election result, result sheets being tampered with, spoiled by a lot, captured very well, and maybe those people who vote wrongly and all of that. It is at that point that all of these issues are reconciled. And the ward collation officer, working with his other lieutenants, will receive the result from the polling officer, and the polling officer will tell him that he doesn't have power to do this, but this was what he observed. Then other party agents also have the right under the Electoral Act to also ask questions and raise concerns. And at the end of the day, whatever it is that is agreed based on those issues raised becomes the position at the ward level. Around 9:30 p.m. that day, we move down to the local government, Agenibode, another 15 minutes drive. So getting there, another process of also checking the outcome will have to be carried out. And in that process, if there are issues, complaints here and there, the Ward Collation Center, acting under the provisions of the Electoral Act, has the power to also correct all of those issues. And so once all of these are corrected, there is no how that you can have the same figure being posted by the beavers at Prince at the polling unit level.
Let me jump in quickly. The principle as established in the introduction of beavers is that not at any time in our electoral process in an election should any record be larger than the record on the beavers. What the attendance center has said is that on several grounds and at several levels, the result figures are higher than the figure as put in the beavers machine, which is an anomaly.
Did the attendance center examine all the beavers? The answer is no.
They said they got reports from the back end.
Okay, that means they hack into the back end.
They said they got the report from INEC.
Who? That's not true. That means they hack into it because when election was going on, they posted results, PDP posted results of 2020 goodbye election in Edo State, which Obaseki won. They posted it. That's one. Secondly, just like I explained earlier, the beavers will accredit you. Nobody says you shouldn't accredit you. But when you vote, what you do with the ballot matters, and that will tell about the validity of the vote you have casted. And so when people say beavers captured your accreditation, fine. No incident form again. Beavers captures you. But when you handle that vote, there are people who are impaired, who may not vote rightly.
The question here, Prince, is that if the record on the beavers is 1,000, and the final collation of the figure of result is 1,600, is an anomaly, which they say they found out in their research.
There are no issues like that because attendance center did not have access to beavers.
They said they are
relying on what PDP was telling them. Because Osita Chidoka has been a member of the PDP. In areas where PDP won, I saw his report. He didn't tell us what happened to those votes. PDP won convenient, but the area where APC won is written does. That's where I see the contradiction in what he was presenting. And I also give you this point. The PDP leadership in Edo State, after the election, wrote a letter to the Independent National Electoral Commission asking for a review of the election results, that they were not agreeing with total outcome. They presented the INEC result based on the CTC recording, which made us which gave a lead of 44,000. And they also presented their own based on their situation room analysis. And they gave us credit, the APC, of winning the election with 4,963 votes.
They reported they reported that there were in 140 polling units, which is 75% of the 886 polling units with overvoting were transferred from the EC8B. So the EC8A records, the EC8B records were not tallying. And you look at the Beavers record also, as said the access by attendance center, all of those three records are supposed to tally, but at the ward level when the collation went on, those results didn't tally.
No, what level the collation result will not be automatically be the same with what the local government collation result will be before you transfer to the state headquarters. In the case of governorship election, in the case of presidential, you move to the National Collation Center. So when you do your collation at the polling unit and you come to the ward level, certainly votes will change because of issues of spot ballot and what have you, which the polling officer has no power to change. From the ward level, it goes to the local government level, and all the agents...
Whatever, Prince Afegwa, so apologies for that. Yeah. Whatever that has been collated at the polling unit, as a result, is one wholesome result and sent to the ward level. Nothing can change at that point. Result, there might be alteration at the ward level of the figures sent from the PU. If you change anything, and that's what Athena Center reported,
no,
there were a lot of changes, there were a lot of alteration, there were a lot of mutilation of the results.
This is, you see, all of this election is happening before the agents of political parties. And you cannot sit down brazenly. Somebody is changing. Where are your agents? We have our agents. They kept our eyes. We too were there as leaders of the party. We were monitoring. When PDP was trying to manipulate certain processes and all that, we raised alarm.
So did PDP manipulate results?
Of course, they tried to.
In your area?
Of course, they did that. And that was why they were posting 2020 results on IREF. They hacked into it. That's why they could post 2020 results. So when we were seeing 2020 results for PDP, I said, where is this coming? Because the result from my area...
So INEC server was hacked? INEC IREF was hacked?
People like Athena said that they can hack because they told you that they went through beavers. And beavers is not available for you to start screening. It's not possible, except if you even canvass them in the lockout or in the tribunal, they will tell you...
They said they got reports from INEC.
What report are they getting? So you have to... Listen, so let us not be hypocritical about this in terms of the position INEC Athena was taking. You cannot get beavers from INEC and you didn't go through them for the entire 4,500 and something polling units in Edo State, and maybe you were able to get results for just a few polling units, and you use that one to score the entire election as not being credible. That to me was partisan participation, partisan analysis by Athena Center. And I was happy that Osita Chidoka told us that after all the analysis, that he's resigning from partisan politics on PDP. And so my position is that he was speaking the voice of PDP and not Athena Center, because at that election, I didn't see Athena Center. It's the same thing I accuse Yaga of doing. They sit down in government house in Benin and they come and be passing report about what happens in the villages and in the towns that make up Edo State. I voted in my polling unit. I participated in the ward collation center. I participated in the local government collation center. I didn't see any of these observer groups that they call Athena Center or even Yaga. But they will tell you, we sent in 400 people on the field and this was the report they brought. I don't want a situation where somebody will be walking from answer to question. You already have your premeditated mind. I've told you this letter here was written by Dr. Tony Azegbemi, the chairman of PDP in Edo. And in this place, he said result based on Form ECA 8 and ECA 8B. And these results are the ones they got. That is based on their own findings, and they are asking INEC to review. They also said results as declared. They said there are discrepancies. But in both instances, APC won. Both the one that PDP talked about, that is the one that they got from their own situation room and what have you, APC won, 4,693. That was the victory.
But the question is, do you think that this election, the Edo governorship election, was the kind of election that Nigerians should deserve?
See, if the election were to be violent, I would say, it is through violence that certain things were manipulated. If the U.S. consular in Lagos, who came to play the role of observer, if they could issue a statement that it was a peaceful, violent-free election, it means that business of that day was carried out in line with the guidelines. Because it is when people are trying to manipulate the process that you see all kinds of violence between popular parties, PDP and APC, in this case, as the case may be. But in a Edo election, it was peaceful, free, and fair.
Would you say the Edo election is the kind of election Nigerians deserve?
Yes, very, very true. I told you.
Is it a perfect election? Is it a good election?
There is no perfect
election. Is it a good election?
All over the world. It's a fantastic election outcome. It's a fantastic election because before we came on air, I told you that ex-governor Obaseki was the reason why the PDP lost the election. He was too combative. He fought people. He quarreled with everybody, divide and rule. His party, the PDP, was manifestly divided into legacy PDP and Obaseki PDP. In that kind of scenario, when you are entering into an election with those kind of division, you cannot get it right.
But why is it that your party seems to be antagonistic on people who are independent, who have monitored several other elections, and you think that on the case of Edo election, their nature and their character just totally changed?
No, you see, let me tell you, I have been in this business, even in terms of election observation, home and abroad. I've observed elections. I know the nuances, and I also understand the dynamics and what you have to apply in getting the proper situation of elections. I monitored election in Liberia some time ago. I was in Banga City, where Charles Taylor comes from. I will not use the outcome of my observation in Banga City to score the entire Monrovia election and the other county the same. I will have to bring out my own impression about where I monitor because I'm a participant. I saw it. But here, they sit down in government house in Benin and they call themselves observers.
You think?
They'll be talking about what happens in Okpola. Meanwhile, I was in Okpola, I didn't see them.
You think the mandate is legitimate?
From more than legitimate. More than legitimate. Edo is tranquil, serene, quiet, robust, and the governor has hit the ground running.
All right.
He's moving across local governments and all of that. It's even projects that they couldn't.
Prince Afegbua.
He has started them.
Thank you so much, Prince Kasim Afegbua. Opportunity for a right of reply on that conversation. Thank you so much indeed.
I would have loved to take 1 hour.
Thank you, Prince Kasim Afegbua. But that's our show for tonight. I'm Sean Akimale. I'll see you next time. God bless Nigeria.